Hello and welcome to Puller Painting and Gaming. More gaming than painting because I can't be bothered to paint on camera. I am joined by Steve and Carl. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We are going over the tournament at GRG that was recently held. It was a 23-man event, and Steve and Carl are two of the podium placement. I could not get Chuck at the same time as both of them, so we had to settle for 2 out of 3. And how did you guys place? Who placed what?
I took first.
I took third.
Excellent, excellent. So, you played Spires, Carl, and Steve,
Yes,
you
sir.
played Old Dominion. Before we go into your lists, so I have a series of questions to ask you guys. The first one being, going into this event, what meta trends did you expect? Be they like American meta at large, or were you expecting more from the local scene? Let's start with you, Steve.
Expecting a fair bit of Dweg. Kind of seeing who was signed up. I recognized several locals that historically either main Dweg or wanted to return to Dweg and have been recently. I also knew that Brian was making the way out from the Chicago area to play, and he was taking Dweg out for one last hurrah. So definitely expected to see lots of the current, Dweg pain points that would have to be addressed. And thankfully I didn't encounter any, but that definitely shaped kind of what I brought.
Cool. Carl, how about you?
Not particularly. I just decided that I was going to bring Spires, and I played what I could get a hold of, really.
So no expectations of meta. Just played what you wanted.
I mean, I don't want to say I didn't have expectations of meta. I just don't really plan around it.
Right.
For local events, it was kind of like, yeah, I expect to see some Dweg, some 100k, Spider Uroni, OD. Like, I expected to see everything, so I just kind of brought a general list that I think can handle most things as long as I play it correctly.
Cool. So that kind of covers my second question for you, which is, did you make your list to meet or counter that meta? So obviously you did not. Steve, how about you? Expecting the Dweg, did you prepare for Dweg, or did you just kind of ignore it?
Yeah, Carl kind of helped me work on kind of fine tuning my list a bit. Admittedly, I don't know. I'm still torn on the if the Killiarch is kitted out in a way that's kind of wasteful. Vexel of the Lost allows him to flank in Varangian, so I can get both heavies in on turn 3 if need be. Also has Skofnung, which is redundant on the Varangians, but allows him to flex into the Athenati if I'm coming up against something like World Breaker, Thane Bricks.
Right.
But the Killiarch Warband's doing pretty decent when it comes to dealing with either the spider issue for Uroni or Dwegam's defense 4 everywhere, things like that. So
right.
Yeah, I suppose.
Real quick, I have another question that's a little bit derailed off of my prepared questions, but before that, what's the spider issue for those who are not in the aware of that?
So it turns out that Spider's got a minor buff, just a little 20-point shave off their point cost. So some enterprising players have decided to see how many spiders they can fit into their list. And it turns out that sometimes you can fit 4 of them in there.
And why is that specifically a problem?
What's
what's so bad about 4 Spider? Break it down.
Carl, do you wanna take this since you probably can put it more eloquently, or
with the Spiders?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's Uroni. So, funnily enough, one of the reasons that Uroni got changes and buffs back in March was because on release, the faction had one of the worst wounds to point or wound counts in a competitive list in the entire game, it probably was the worst. Spider spam is like unironically like the highest. We've got it's like pushing 160 wounds at last count from what I remember. So it's just a lot of monsters that don't degrade with tenacious, basically E3 across the board, the ability to scatter loose formation in as a bubble and individually as they need it, because the geisha's really good now. So yeah, it's just kind of a wall of meat that's coming at you. And it's not like the killiest thing in the world, but the list is supported with Oni and birds, so it doesn't really need the help on the killiness. It just kind of locks you down with spiders and then hits you with the birds.
Cool. Thanks for explaining that. For those who didn't know, yeah, so I also went to this tournament, which is part of the reason I'm interviewing these guys, and that was something I was not wanting to face because it just is a pain. Going back to something you said about Carl helping you with your list. So again, for those who don't know, we're on a team together called Competent Conquest. We bounce ideas off each other, but Carl tends to write a lot of lists for people. So my question is, what do you typically present to Carl when you're like, hey, I'm looking to go to this event? Do you present a general idea of what you're trying to do? Do you present the faction and what you're expecting to face or what wanting to counter, weaknesses? How do you go about presenting that to Carl before he helps you out with the list?
Oftentimes, but not always. But oftentimes, I'll send him a list and I'll say, I think there's a decent framework to start with here. And then Carl will look at it and he'll send me back a different list and he'll say, try this. And then I do, and I'm like, yeah, that's pretty hot.
Right. Carl, what's your angle on that? Like when you're presented with an idea, what are you looking for when you go to change it?
It's really just trying to find the efficiencies, the combos that work. I do consider meta answers when I'm building those kinds of lists, especially for other people, and just kind of trying to trim it down within the scope of the individual meta and just kind of what I think the meta as a whole is shaking up to be.
Cool. So this kind of leads into the next question as well. So we'll start with you, Steve, since we're kind of talking about your list a bit. For the event, what strengths and weaknesses did you anticipate with your list? What was looking good? What were you concerned with encountering?
Lots of cleave scattered throughout. The Theocrators cleave 1 on its main attacks, as are the Prodromi. Once they hit tier 2, they also have Brutal Impact 1 on their impact attacks. Varangians, obviously, are cleave monsters. Kiliarch's providing cleave to, whichever unit he's kind of piggybacking in. Caryatids, double Caryatids, providing lots of AP2 shooting. So I'm pretty well set when it comes to any armor stacking. As far as weaknesses, the list tops out at a whopping defense 3 and gets the absolute daylight shot out of it. So very wary of shooting and volume, but
Right.
shooting really sucks as always for OD.
Right. How about you, Carl? Strengths and weaknesses in your list that you anticipated going into the event?
Weaknesses, there's not much that this particular form of Spire's list is weak to, I feel, other than piloting errors. That's typically why I fall back on Spires, because I generally feel like my only bad matchup is a better player, and those are just fun. So really, like, Trinavada spam actually is not fun for Spires because just how that list does damage as well as the rituals there. But other than that, it was just kind of, I was showing up to have a good time. And really just kind of, I'm trying to get my last hurrah in with Spires before the rework, because although they are desperate, they are in need of a rework, somewhat desperately, I would say. But I feel that if the other factions reworks are anything to go off of, they're going to rip out the heart and soul of Spires with deck manipulation and moving your cards around, and just replace it with stuff that's good stats mechanically.
Cool. That's a somber mentality, but not unfounded, I think. So what is the general game plan of your list? How are you, barring context of what the other player's doing, what are you planning to do when you hit the table with your list?
Um, Early scoring, because Spires now has the best early scoring in the game, because everyone else's light scoring got stripped, except for good old Spires. Um, so that's the big one, I think. Is just getting onto the field fast, making sure that I'm protecting my basically gun line with the marksman, and then otherwise just kind of getting onto the field and then playing reactively. So it's very much I shove forward because I can push farther than anyone else, and then I sit back and wait to see what they do, shore up those points, and then just kind of delete things as they come into me.
Cool. So real quick, we'll go into your list. You've got a Biomancer Warlord. He's got Sensory Augmentation, Master of Flesh, Desolation Drone, Siege Rigger Behemoth, and his Warband. Then you've got a High Clone Executor, Marksman variant, Overtaxed Nerve System, Tracking Pheromones. 2 MSUs of Force-Grown Drones with Catabolic Nodes. 2 sets of Marksman clones, a 5 brick and a 4 brick, assumingly you're putting the Executor in the 4.
Yep.
Then you've got a Ferromancer. He's got Avatar Protection, two sets of Strix, set of Brute Drones, and a Surveyor. Yeah, solid game plan. And then Steve, let me pull up your list. So, same question, Steve. What was the general game plan, barring table and player context?
Typical OD. Build up your forces, don't get shot, and kind of get into position for kind of a big turn, and with the horses, the Prodromi specifically, I guess. Capitalize on their March 8 so that you can potentially get on some early zones if there's not something keeping you off of them, like the risk of reprisal or something. But yeah, just kind of get ready to get everything in order and go.
What about the Theocrator? That's kind of a different regiment now that people are getting used to. What's your game plan for deploying him? Where is he going?
I wish I had a good answer. I'm also trying to figure that out myself. I guess my general game plan is to have Caryatids kind of on one on either side, kind of covering ideally multiple, threatening multiple zones, but also kind of threatening each kind of threatening a flank and whatever's in front of it, potentially with some other support from either Varangians or Athenati or things like that, so that if anything does try to go into the flank, they will pay dearly for that. Ideally, with the way I roll, throw it into something that doesn't have crazy volume. Otherwise, I will get 18 wounds put on it in the first turn it comes out. But you even if you take quite a few hits with it, you can really bully the daylights out of things with it between the 15 attacks at cleave one on with 3s on the charge, the extra potential charge distance or extra trample, and then either 8 trample native or 12 trample augmented. So it really loves going into things that don't have a lot of defense, because it's just a lot of bullshit coming their way.
Yeah. So do you find yourself generally shoving it down the middle or more where it's needed?
Generally where it's needed. Sometimes that is the middle, but
Right.
sometimes if I think, that a zone's not well supported enough, I can kind of push the Theocrator and a few other things kind of the opponent's way to try and, deny scoring for a turn or just kind of cause trouble, or otherwise, maybe do kind of put it up the middle, and then if need be, if I win that engagement, I can kind of, pivot it, one way or the other to threaten another part of the table or another zone and kind of go from there, kind of play it by ear.
Cool. So going over your list real quick, you've got a Ziliarch Warlord, Vexillia of the Lost, Skofnung, Gladiator, MSUs, two MSUs of Centaur Prodromoi, the MSU of Athenati, 4 stack of Ranking Guard, got a Hero Deacon, Cultists, MSU of Legionnaires, 2 MSUs of Caryatids. You got the Theocrator with Eternal Discipline and another MSU of Legionnaires. So, going into the round. So this was just a 3-round event. Even though it was 22 players, it was just kept to a single day. Fairly casual. But still worth a lot of points for those trying to go to Worlds. So, round 1. Carl, let's start with you. Who were you playing against, and how did that go?
So I was playing against Paul, who is one of the local Golden Rhino Old Dominion players. I believe on Discord he has nobody important.
That's his handle, by the way.
Yeah, that's his Discord handle.
You're just not just calling him that.
To clarify.
Then
The
how did that game go?
clarification is, it was a decent start warm-up game. I went into this tournament with 1 practice game with the list. I'd played 1 game of Spires in like the last year before this tournament. So just kind of good to stretch the muscles. It was over on turn 3. We played it out until 7 when I tabled, because Old Dominion does take a little while to table, of course, by virtue of being OD. But yeah, it was basically, we played this on declined flank. So the problem is, weirdly, I'm going to say weirdly, this is one of those scenarios where almost always my list deployment is going to be autoing, or almost always the Ferromancer. If I roll a medium on 2, because my Hyclone Executor has forward force, my bio is always going to be the auto. Usually the Pharaoh is the medium that I will bring in. But for this scenario, it has to be the Terraphon to get the scoring that I want, because I can assert pressure or scoring pressure onto basically all 3 zones on my side. So even though he's going to turn 1 off, I still get that double score on 2. And it kind of escalated from there. He didn't really know what to do against Spires, so he split deployed. Split deploying against Spires is one of the worst things that you can do in the game, because especially frankly a good Spires player, because my deck is full of redundancy, and so I will split deploy as well, but I'll do it better, and I will have it so that I have 1 of each unit on each side, and usually not running together, so that no matter what the play is, I can usually activate something and be fighting, or chain my Mancies to be activating wherever it needs support and pressure. So basically he uses his casters, or he puts his casters on his right flank. So that'll be the Moroi and his Hierodeacon with Cultists and his Archimandrite with Legionaries, and then he didn't support them the rest of the game until Athenati that came in on turn 4. So basically just ran it over with supported Strix with buffs. He only threw the Praetorians down the middle, and then he threw the Varangians on his left flank, and so it basically just turned into I'm max scoring every turn, he's not really scoring anything, and like he killed a decent amount of my stuff just because it is OD and he has that Zilliarch supremacy turn.
Yeah.
So he killed both my Strix, one of the Force-grown drones, and the Terraphon. But was basically, I think it ended 64-8 or something like that. I tabled him on 7.
And in case forgot to mention it, was first round was decline flank. Should have been able to pick that up from Carl's clues if he didn't outright say it. I don't remember. Very good. So yeah, 60 something to 8. It's pretty. So why do you say it was over turn 3? Is it just because of deployment, I'm assuming?
Yep, because that's where he put. So he put the Varangians unsupported. So basically, as we're going in, he has his Praetorians staring down my marksman clones, Deso drones, and brute drones. So, and he even said it was kind of one of those where I'm like, okay, bud. I said that if he advanced with the Praetorians into that, because I generally, even during games, will try to give helpful advice to my opponents. Especially, I start to go into teaching mode if I am feeling pretty strongly confident about the game.
Yeah.
So I told him that if he advanced, like if he tried to march charge something or just assert pressure with the Praetorians unsupported, they were just going to die. And he was like, no, they're really tough. And I'm like, I'm going to induce lethargy them, hit them with Deso drones, and then carpet bomb them in the flank with marksman clones, and then I'm going to charge clash them with brute drones when you're down to D2.
Yeah.
And he still didn't necessarily believe that, I think, and it was kind of a F around find out. They died rather horribly after he took a march charge with them. And then the Varangians got smacked pretty bad by the marksman clones, or by marksman clones without the high clone executor, so it was just very much a he made improper deployments, and that was exacerbated by the fact that his medium's reinforcements were not very good. So there was no real point where he was in the game, to be honest. It was just kind of if he had center deployed his Varangians and then on the Zilliarch turn tried to do a double hit, get the Varangians into my brute drones and the Praetorians into my Deso drones, then he could have at least started to like maybe look at it from the perspective of a table and scoring out. But once those Varangians came in on the wrong flank, it was just kind of over.
Right. All right. Steve, your round 1.
Round 1, I played Bill from Cincinnati. He was playing Spires. I think a fairly, bread and butter Spires list, similar to similar but different from the one that Carl was playing. I will admit one thing that kind of caught me a bit off guard is seeing the High Clone Executor in an MSU of Vanguard clones rather than with the Marksman clones.
What?
Yeah, I was a bit surprised to see that. He had 5 clones, and I'm like, oh, that's 6 wide's going to be a bit ungainly. And then it turns out, no, he's chilling with the Vanguard clones. So I was a bit surprised to see that. So, as Carl mentioned, the first mission was Decline Flank. I apologize if I'm a little foggy on this. I don't usually remember my games terribly well after they've happened, but this was interesting in the fact that we had kind of set tables in terms of terrain. And for this one, we basically had in the center of the table 2 big pieces of impassable terrain.
Yep, I remember. So I'll throw up. I took pictures of the train layouts. I'll throw them up post.
Creating some fun little death channels. So predictably, Bill parked his marksman clones behind one of the pieces of impassable terrain to kind of keep him somewhat protected. He had Strix kind of, out in front, kind of, keeping me a little bit pushed back. Although, if I remember correctly, I don't remember if he put them into the. I want to say he put them into the Thea crater instead of the cultist with Hierodeacon, because I probably would have lost the cultists if he had done that. But I think the Thea crater and getting some early damage was a little tempting. But he had down. Thank you, Discord. Shit, where was I? We kind of got into a little, match on my right where I had some Prodromi. I think one or two things of Prodromi. No, one thing of Prodromi on my right, kind of backed up by some Caryatids and some Legionnaires. Flying over Minear Zone, he had his Ferromancer in the Brute Drones, kind of supported by one of those damnable Force-Grown drones with Catabolic Node. 8 free hits on death. That's from the flank. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Prodromi hate that. One trick, since their defense 2 is shield. 4 wounds a pop. But yeah, just kind of ground down on that side, ground down on the other. My left flank was kind of besieged by the I think he put the siege break, eventually the siege breaker, but also the Vanguard clones with the high clone, and he was also supporting them kind of with the Terraphon. So he kind of had that, hiding behind the building on my left, kind of taking pot shots at things that got too close, kind of trying to bully, his way onto my zone from his. And then in the center, we just kind of had a big cluster where, I threw the Thea Crater. He had Incarnate Sentinels. He had Strix. He had, Deso drones, the Biomancer. I do think he played the Biomancer a little too far forward at one point, because I was able to get, I think, the Thea Crater into that at one point, and that basically was the end of the Biomancer. Took a lot of pressure off because, no more unstable enhancement, no more crazy heals, no more deadly blade or deadly shots on the marksman clones. And at that point, I think what finally ended up finishing off the Thea Crater is with 3 wounds left. He, I think, March charged the Incarnates into its flank to pop it with impacts. That let me put the Athenati into their flank on my Supremacy turn to double clash them and remove them, which I'm glad they kind of came and went. I eventually got the Varangians into, I forget what he had on the center zone, but it died predictably. And then winning Supremacy at one point, I think I was able to make a somewhat greedy charge to tie down his Terraphon and lock that down. And at that point, I think that kind of sealed the deal. But I think the final score was something like 40-28 in my favor.
Nice. So a bit of a closer game.
Yeah, I mean,
Score-wise.
initially, I was kind of kept back between all the ranged presence and the force grown screens and the Strix kind of being a thing that I couldn't really ignore because you unstable enhanced them, and
Yeah.
turns out that Clash 4 Strix on the charge from a bajillion miles away is pretty annoying, followed by Lethal Demise 4.
Yeah. Yeah, Strix get real wild. Very good. Going into round 2. Carl, starting with mission. What was the mission?
Mission for this one was head-to-head. So this was my old nemesis back with Nords, where, honestly, in general, where I took almost every single one of my competitive losses on this mission, so I've got a little bit more practice in it as of late.
Sounds familiar. So who are you playing against?
I played against Will, who was one of our buddies. He's in CC, and he's a pretty solid local. He was playing the 4 Spiders Euroni.
Lovely. How did that go for you, sir?
So, I basically did my normal thing. So I had Strix pronging each flank. The one that was on my right flank was obviously on that center zone, just so I could start scoring on 2. Because he's an army entirely of size 2, it's one of those where I can pull a fun little piece of nasty tech, where I just double screen the marksman and then have the marksman in a line next to each other, or literally behind each other, on a killing field, because there's basically he has to kill the screens to get to the marksman. And it's on the center of the field, so he kind of has to approach it. And then I ended up having my Siege Breaker and Terraphon go towards the 3 zone. My Brute Drones were supporting the 4 zone. Because on this scenario, it's very much I know that I get to the 3 before him, even though he potentially has some fast movement on 2. I just outcard him so severely that he can't afford to take those if I build my deck remotely correctly. So basically he made, and we talked about this a lot afterwards, so he basically made his game losing mistake on turn 2, and then another mistake on turn 3 that just kind of pushed it over the edge, because he got nervous by how far forward the Strix were at the end of 1, which is fair. So he put all 3 spiders that he got on 2 on the small flank, or the small zone side. So at that point, he's basically declaring that his win condition is pushing into my 4 zone,
Right.
and then scoring it out. At that point, he's already on 2, basically said that he's not going to heavily contest the 3 zone, which means that I can bring in both of my marksmen centralized. There's a lot of things. It just gives me so many more options. In that matchup, he absolutely needs to basically sit back for a little bit and then just run onto the zone, run onto that 3 zone with all the spiders once they're all on and he kind of has a dedicated position. But having Strix that far back, it kind of throws people off and can occasionally make them play a little bit too aggressive in some ways. So then on 3, after he's already committed to the wrong flank, he takes a march charge at the end with an E3. With an E3 Geisha that's touching a forest, so it's in cover. Oh no, actually it wasn't. That was the kicker. It was an E3 Geisha, but I had an unactivated Ferromancer, unactivated Brute Drones ready to go, unactivated Marksman. He march charged Strix in the flank. I heal the Strix back, clash it, lethargy it, because it had been kicked up to D4, and then basically just wiped out most of its wounds with both Marksmen hosing it.
Right.
So he was stuck there with like 4 wounds left, and at that point that was committing way too early from a position of disadvantage was what kind of threw it. At that point, I killed him pretty quickly without needing to get the Brute Drones in. Was able to get another Spider the next turn just because, yeah, they're tough and hard to kill, especially with loose formation. But screened Marksman with Deadly dumps so many hits in, you're bound to roll some 6s on, even with Tenacious. It just kind of started rolling him over. He didn't have enough to contest me on the 3, so I was able to start sweeping there. So it was just kind of started rolling over, basically.
Cool.
You know
what the final score was?
Yes, this one was 63-4. He killed a Strix and a Force-Grown Drone.
Oof. Rough time. Steve, you're round 2.
Round 2, I played Matt, also known as Carnivorous Kang. Semi-local. He's just about 2 hours west of us. Comes to a lot of our events. We go to a lot of his events. He played with Druten with a list called Cast Ye the First Stone, even though ye have sinned greatly. Man likes his slingers. He brought 5 stands of them. I don't know what it is. There's something in my head. There's some part of my ape brain or lizard brain that just has a violent hatred of slingers. When I see them, my first thought is I have to kill these. These have to get off the table. Which is probably why I played very loosely with my poor Hierodeacon. Rest in peace.
You just start seeing red and you just blitzed straight towards those slingers?
A little bit. Not blitzed is a strong word, but more like, okay, I am loose formation. He doesn't care because he's just going to chant anyway. So I'm still in effective range. He has an 18-inch range with volley 3. I probably just need to start getting stuff there and just start, trying to deal with the problem. There's also 3 hunting packs that I had to deal with, so it was mainly kind of trying to at least get one of the 4 light problems off, kind of dealt with initially. I did stay out of range initially. Round 2, he marches them forward a little bit and then proceeds to shave 2 of my 3 cultist stands off. So that went well. However, that was ultimately vindicated because round 3, the Theocrator came on. Theocrator eventually touched the slingers, and that problem, went away. At that point, it was kind of on my 4 zone with the far zones. I kind of had the Theocrator a little bit central on the table. Higher Deacon came and went along with the cultists. My far zone was kind of supported by one of my MSUs of Caryatids, some of my Prodromi, and I think on that side, in addition to 1 hunting pack and the Slinger block, he also had his Winglord Predator. Unfortunately, I think one critical error that he made was he didn't finish the job and didn't allocate quite enough to that side, because the Winglord brought the Prodromi down to 1 stand and broke them just before my Supremacy turn. The next turn when I activated my Supremacy, I basically unbroke them and double clashed. Winglord Predator did not like that, having already been shot a few times by the Caryatids, so he didn't really have anything there to answer the single standard Prodromi left. So from that turn on, I just kind of ran them into his far zone and just started scoring. By the time that he realized what was happening, he had to basically reform and then march an Apex over. It wouldn't actually stop me from scoring for, I think, 1 or 2 turns, and then when he finally did charge it in there, he failed all. He got 3 impact hits, but I passed all the rolls and then proceeded to kill the already wounded Apex. So he basically couldn't stop me from scoring that. This is the same Apex that had also attempted a 4-up rerollable charge against my Athenati, failed both rolls, moved forward 2 inches, and proceeded to eat a little bit of shit from Caryatids. On the main kind of midboard zone for 3 points, that's kind of, we had a nice little killing field where, I had a bunch of Legionnaires kind of screening things, Brangian Guard waiting in the wings behind them. He had his mounted Apex with Apex with Predator on top, Death Streak and History and Chanting War. He had his Warbred right behind that. His Thunder Riders were kind of central deployment, I guess, but they eventually did polish off the Athenati, clean their clocks really well, but turns out getting into range of double Caryatid MSUs is not great for their health. Didn't work super well. They also got charged in the back by some Legionnaires to finish the job. And ultimately, he didn't do too well with his rolls when it came to killing off the Legionnaire screen. Varangians were kind of able to clean up after that, and at that point, just kind of ran away with scoring for the last few turns. I think that one ended, what was it, 61-20. But yeah, head-to-head really seems to be one of those ones where you have to make sure that you allocate enough. And I think that he probably could have put the Warbred on his 4 zone to kind of act as a secondary, line of defense, because that would have stopped me from scoring that 4 zone for several turns.
Yeah.
By the time that he maneuvers the Apex over there, I've already scored for 2 turns, and I don't know. It's kind of rough to come back from that.
Yeah. Very good. Last round, Carl. What's the mission?
The mission for this one was grind them down.
Yeah, and who would you play?
I believe he is one of your locals, Chris.
He is indeed. Yep. Yeah, we came up
Nice.
from North Carolina and drove 11 hours together.
That is a brutal drive.
Thank you for that, by the way.
Oh, you're
Yeah,
welcome.
no, it was awesome to see you.
No, I love coming up to those events. I would love to come up to events that are not 11 hours. So if you're shorter than 11 hours from North Carolina and feel like putting on a fun tournament, I'd love to show up for it because I'll drive 11 hours. I'll drive less. But anyway, back to your last round. So you're playing Chris. He's playing Wadroon.
Yep. I am going to go out on a limb and say that your meta doesn't have many very good Spires players, probably.
We have one Spires player who is brand new.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
He didn't, very, very nice guy. He didn't really know what my army did, and that's a rough one with Spires. I kind of just did my usual Horns of the Bull with Desos and Marksman anchoring my center. Had Strix, and then he was playing a very, very heavy centered Wadroon list. So he didn't really have stuff on the table besides Hunting Pack until turn 3. So basically, I was already there at his backboard, making charge clashes on things the turn they showed up and shooting them with Marksman. He made a volley march charge with a quaddle into my Terraphon. So I just induced Lethargy and Spire clashed and then hit it in the flank with Force-Grown Drones. He didn't realize that it was a 6-up charge, but because they were within range of the Terraphon, I had 4 dice to do it, which actually turns it into like over a 50% chance. It's like 55% chance of landing the charge. So they land that, polished off the quaddle in 1 turn after doing like 1 wound to the Terraphon. The Wing Lord charge clashed. My other Force-Grown Drones took like 5 wounds for its trouble from the bomb and then just got picked up by Marksman. The Tontor Warbred together killed the Siege Breaker and then died to Marksman, Force-Grown Drones, and Terraphon. Thunders and the other Warbred were molested by the double Strix, and then at the end it was the Chosen War getting picked up by the Brute Drones. So final score I think was 40 or 50 something to 10. Yeah, basically it was just, it's tough to go into that kind of aggro, and to do it you really have to concentrate your deployment, and he went wide into outcarding Spires. And this was the game that I rolled all of my dice on turn 2. All my mediums were on, so I was literally all in except for the Siege Breaker. So it was just kind of, it was a rough matchup for him, and then he didn't deploy correctly into it, so it was kind of just picking it off one at a time while I scored out.
Yeah. This is also, I think, his biggest event that he's been to with Conquest. He's a solid player, but he's not familiar with the American meta. He's not familiar with these larger events. Even though it was only 3 rounds, it's way more people than I think he's played up to that point. I think the biggest we typically fire off is like 14 locally. So new experience for him. I think he learned a lot. But he plays higher than I did, so something there. How about you, Steve?
Nice.
Your last round.
Last round, I played Mercurial Mark, also from Cincinnati. Mark's a great guy. Comes to a lot of our events. It's we try to go to some of his events when he hosts them. It was funny because once again, I think that for Grind Them Down, the double impassable made another unwelcome appearance. At which point he said, "And you guys give me grief for my terrain." And I had no answer to that.
Yeah, who put the terrain in? Was it Peter? Peter made this layout?
This was Peterson, yes.
This is your fault, Peter. You're the reason.
Oh, when he doesn't have to play, he loves getting weird with terrain.
Yeah.
Um,
So what was he playing? I missed what faction?
Yep. So he's playing City States. Let's see. Polemark with Inscription of Lighter Alloys with 4 stands of Agama and Andramarcos and Sacred Band veterans. MSU of Haspists. Talos with Mark of Eris. Hephaestion. And Aparcos and 3 Companion Cav. And then Warlord Eric Dark and MSU Selene. And then 4 Scorpios Chariots roving around doing chariot things. Much like slingers, chariots stimulate some part of my brain that just makes me say these things have to die. I hate them. I hate them.
That brings something up, Steve. I don't think we've played yet.
No, I can only imagine what 8 chariots must be like.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, playing OD, just having to get into position while you just playing shit at me is very upsetting. But yeah, grind them down. Real fun mission that I'm sure everyone loves. I know it's one of my favorites. Let's see, standouts. Yeah, Theocrator just kind of up the middle again. In that nice little impassable terrain death funnel. Killiar kind of off to the side, to its left, kind of waiting in the wings there. I had a few things to my right that, since I believe he outcarded me at the time, since I had some pretty crap reinforcement rolls. Yeah, he just decided to pop Inscription of Lighter Alloys at the end of his activation and just have the Agama kind of uncontested just yeet onto my zone from a bajillion miles away. Made it pretty handily, and then shut off my zone from me. They didn't really make it that far into the next round.
They are.
I think he ended up clashing with 1 or 2 stands left at that point. Reprisal was swift and brutal. But yeah, Agama, I think Companion Cavalry were on that side, if I remember correctly. Curiously, I think he put most of his Scorpios kind of in the center, and then had some of one of them maybe peel off to my left to cause trouble. But I think at least three of them kind of stayed in the center and kind of spread out from there. No, I'm thinking of a different game that I had a different time. 2 were in the center, and then 1 on each flank. The Aristarch and the Selene were just kind of chilling, kind of towards the center, kind of behind that big zone, in the middle, kind of using Impassable to try to, stay in cover and just kind of use Arctic Fire to pelt anything that got towards the middle. Talos also eventually made his way to the middle, but he, Mark told me at one point that he doesn't, his defense with this Talos is questionable, and I have to admit, yeah, I think I had the Killiarch, and you can only fit 3 infantry stands into a monster stand. So Killiarch, 2 stands of Varangians, and I think 1 stand supporting. Yeah, they killed the Talos in one go. So
Wild.
that was not quite how I expected that exchange to go. Aspists came and went pretty quickly. I don't remember what I put into them, but that was not a positive experience for them. Yeah, basically just kind of had to work around the chariots a little bit and just kind of grind things down. And then I think at the very end, it was just...
you said the name.
The what?
It's the name of the mission. You said the name. You said the name of the title. It's almost like you were doing what was intended for that mission.
Great.
Anyway, before I interrupted you, continue.
Basically, at the very end, it was just the Aristarch and the Seleni kind of wondering where everything had gone so wrong in their lives, and I think at that point, Mark basically just said, "Okay, we're pretty much just going to assume that they die. They can't stop you, and you basically just dance on and off the zones forever."
Yeah.
So at that point, we called it. I think it was probably around 6 or 7, I want to say, and then that was being grind them down. I did get kind of pushed back with that Agama charge, so I kind of got put back on points a little bit until I was able to kind of overcome at the end. But that was 33 to 24.
Very good. So yeah, so you were all three of you podium placements were undefeated since it was only 3 rounds. So now that we're done talking rounds, let's go back and talk a little bit like the hindsight, right? So start with you, Carl. What were some things, if any, maybe nothing did, what surprised you in your either opponent's lists or game plans that you're like, oh man, that's clever, or something else positive? Anything?
I I will quote Ben, the great Ben Rizlov, no longer with us, at least in Conquest, and say that there are two things that have never happened to me at the same time: being confused by my opponent's strategy and losing.
Yeah.
It was really the moves that were made that I didn't expect were usually kind of a, oh, you're donating me something for free. That was about the abundance of it. Like I said, I think it's hard to kind of measure the efficacy of those lists. I'd had a pretty big hand in writing the list that Will was using, the 4 spiders, that was competent tech that we'd been talking about. Chris's was just very much on the back foot because of the heavies, and it was kind of Paul. It was slightly unoptimized OD, so I wouldn't say I was particularly surprised.
Yeah.
With anything really.
That's all right. It's not always going to happen. How about you, Steve? Anything that you're like, oh man, that was an interesting play, or
I guess props to Bill for, I would say correctly, in at least my mind, putting the Strix into the Theocrator and just getting extra, free damage on it early on. Otherwise, it would have eventually eaten his marksman clones as it continued its rampage. But you could see the gears turning where he's like, I could go for a crazy charge and try to get into the cultists. But he very correctly kind of backed them up, waited, and then the Theocrator showed up, and it turns out that was probably the right call. So good on him for resisting the urge to just kind of throw them into the first thing on the table and probably having them not do a whole lot.
cool. All right, now a little bit more into the negative. Carl, what was the most common mistake you saw your opponent make? List building,
Going wide
gameplay.
against Spires.
Going wide against Spires.
That's just, I outcard them, I have screens, going wide into them just lets me... They lose a screen, or they might break through my screen, and then I kill them with the thing, and then they don't have anything to back it up and follow through. Because that's really how you... That's how you crack Spires competitively, is you break through their screens, and then you have units that are ready to punch through after you break through those screens. Otherwise, you'll just kind of end up with a field where you've killed all the Spire screens and nothing else really.
Right. How about their list building? Anything that you're like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that with their lists? Not that you're necessarily focusing so much on that, but
yeah, Paul's list needs a Theocrator. That's just that was the main weakness of it and where he was suffering for sure. Chris's list, it needs to drop the Chosen of War and pick up another Thunder Rider, and then probably make some other changes in it. That was the real glaring weakness, though. I think it was. I know he was talking about all of his heavies coming in on 3, which is all well and good. But when I'm already in your backboard at the top of 3 because you weren't contesting anything on the field before that, it's a little bit rough.
Yeah, he chatted with Brian afterward, and he has completely changed how he's building his lists now. So he's on a good path.
Good. That's always fantastic.
Yeah. Steve, now that you're coughing.
And
What
then
was the most
Will's.
common sorry, I forgot Bill.
I was good. Yeah. I mean, that was. I think maybe I would drop one of the Bushi from the list, and it's a list that I wrote. So that's just after kind of seeing it crash tested. I think it does want that second shooter, specifically for some of those scenarios. Like, one of the big weaknesses of Spires competitively is things that can break through a line and then kill an MSU, because that's really all that the Spires characters are sitting in.
Yeah.
And the Bushi were kind of easy to gun or to fight down, but Ayakashi would have been able to kind of show up and start doing that immediate damage that I think would have benefited his list quite a bit.
Yeah. Cool. Hope you're listening, Will. He wrote you the wrong list. Steve, most common mistake you saw your opponent make, list building or gameplay?
I guess very broadly, I guess kind of expanding on what Carl said, just imbalanced resource allocation, kind of putting things either going, wide when they should have been more focused, kind of not finishing the, like when I think in the game with Kang, having one more regiment on that, far scoring zone to defend it probably would have completely shut down that entire side of the table for me, but it wasn't there, so it just gave me 3 points. Not committing that apex to stop the Projomi, when he had the chance, kind of, little things like that. Yeah, just kind of, not committing enough to one side, or kind of committing too much to the wrong area, just kind of things like that.
Cool.
And then I guess it's a little more focused thing. Bill's a great guy, super fun opponent, like playing him. I'm still really confused why the High Clone Executor was in the Vanguard clones.
Well, maybe he'll let us know. If you're watching this, let us know why. What's your thoughts on that? So then
I'm guessing the usual. I was going to say the usual thought is Bastion on getting D4 Vanguard clones, because that D4 E2 profile looks really tempting. It just doesn't do what you think it's going to do in practice.
Yeah. Especially into a list with a bunch of cleave, especially Linebreaker cleave.
Yeah, it doesn't like that. So my last prepared question, and jump into this if we are able to make it more of a discussion, great. If not, we'll work with that. So whoever wants to jump on it first, how do you anticipate the meta evolving up to the next rework, which I believe is anticipated in January? Like, did this event open your eyes to anything, whether it be in your games or discussions with other players? What do you think?
I guess I'll get my little quick quips off before Carl gives a comprehensive answer. I think the effects of the future meta, much like nuclear war, will surprise us. In all honesty, I'm half expecting things at this point to come full circle and double back on range being more of a problem again, kind of bring us back to where it all started. I don't know. We had range being a problem, then we got defense, and then we had cleave, and then we had evasion, and then we had volume, and now we're kind of going back towards defense. It feels like, so kind of interesting to see where it lands. Now here's Carl for an actual answer.
I mean, I think that covers most of it. I mean, really, it's always going to be something that PB misses. That someone, maybe a playtester told them and they didn't listen for whatever reason. But there's always going to be something that slips through every update, and that's the thing that's going to get pushed, basically until it gets nerfed. And so I think we had some things slip through this update, mainly the spiders for Yoroni, was a big one. On that front, Dweg are just very strong, but it's kind of the D4 kind of strong. Weirdly enough, very off meta Nords list was able to just kind of swamp them out because Dread is a very good rule.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, I think that was the most surprising event of happenstance of the tournament.
Dweg not
in my mind, at least. No, not Dweg not performing, specifically that Nords list beating the Dweg. But yeah, Dweg are very strong. OD is kind of in that spot. I don't even really know how I want to hit OD. It's probably the Zilliarch has to change at some point, but OD is kind of in that Spires position from that they've been in for the last few years, where they're an island that's slowly shrinking of what's meta and viable.
Yeah.
And eventually that island will shrink to nothing until they get kind of a full rework. So I don't want to necessarily clip the only things in OD that are working, but also the things in OD that are working are making some very oppressive and nasty combinations.
Right. Yeah, something I was observing, ranged is a little oppressive still, with the pullback of Tenacious 2 against shooting, which I think is needed. But it does weird things when you don't address the range stuff itself, and instead what's countering it.
Yeah, because the oppressive ranged was the only stuff that was able to break through the oppressive counter shooting, and now that the oppressive counter shooting has been hit, the oppressive range was probably not touched as much as it needed to be.
Yeah, because I was after the event, I was looking at like, man, how would I deal with those marksmen? Because that's what would bother me in your list based on how I play my lists. I was like, man, I don't have much that can answer that in time before I just get shredded by the marksman clones.
No, I mean, you use Thoras with Polymark to basically just not take shooting damage, and then you just shove in really hard. One of the big lessons from shooting back in the good old days of like a couple years ago is sometimes you just gotta put your head down and just run forward into stuff, and just kind of good old World War I trench tactics. Let some stuff die, break through the screens, break through into the shooters.
Yeah. So I did run Polemarks in Thoras at that event, and just the volume shooters were able to punch through. Volume, and I went against Paul's list with the carotids. And yeah, I was reducing the shooting, but they were still punching through more than I could afford. So I personally found it rough. It is also a dice game, so maybe it was just some swingy rolls.
It's like it should survive most of the time in a lot of those, but I think I will say I think that this is the healthiest meta of 2025. Not that is saying an immense amount, but it's better than it has been.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
I think it was definitely some big mistakes made, and we backpedaled from those, and now we're in a better spot. And the things that need to get changed are not as problematic as the things that needed to get changed a couple months ago.
Well, gentlemen, I'm through my questions. Do you have any final thoughts?
Not particularly. No, it was a fun tournament. It was great seeing you up there.
Yeah, it was good. So, Steve, if you don't have anything, the next thing I'd say is there anything you want to plug? Any events that you're going to that you want to promote? Other people coming out for? or stuff you're doing?
I guess in the near future, being November, as my computer fails to load.
Oh, yeah, Far Harbor's got events.
Yep, going to, let's see, well, I guess in order, LT's Hobbies and Games will be having a Worlds event November 8th, kind of a local store near Flint, Michigan, about an hour north of our store. Run by Andrew Campbell. Should be a good time. A little more of a casual affair compared to some of the sweatier events, but great group out there. And then we also have Matt and Carl's store, Far Harbor Games, out in Grand Rapids. They will be having an event on the 29th, and then a second event December 27th, just after Christmas but before New Year's. So if you're looking for a good time and you're in the area, those would be ones to hit up. Should be a lot of fun, and yeah.
Very good. Anything from you, Carl?
Nothing that Steve hasn't already covered.
Cool. For me personally, I'm getting ready to host a big GT with another Vanguard here in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I'll put the little flyer up at the end here. It's just a placeholder right now. We do not have tickets on sale. We're waiting for the store to get that worked out because they've had issues with online sales in the past. So they're a little gun shy. Working on getting that set up. Should have that no later than November. So February 7th and 8th, having a 5-round GT. We're starting out the player count at 24. As that fills out, we're potentially increasing it as the store has space. So, with that, thanks for joining me, guys, and catch you later.
Thank you for having us on.
Thank you.